Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12, who's here with me today. The discussion of who you'd rather be, the Big 12 or the ACC. I think there are two angles of this. Let's start with the conference survivability and viability standpoint. Who's in a better spot between now and 2030?
The answer is pretty easy, and that is the Big 12. The reason that's easy is because no active member of the Big 12 is trying to leave. So we talk about conference viability, conference livelihood.
Well, they stopped suing them in the ACC, to be fair.
Or your lifespan, yes. And the ACC in response in the last 2 months was like, you guys want to get out but cheaper? Well, it goes down every year. And 4 years from now, it goes down plenty enough that Clemson or Florida State could make that call. The reason I say that is not because I am a Big 12 truther, by the way, but not because I'm rooting for the death of the ACC necessarily, but instead, if you talk about viability, who wants to leave the Big 12? No one. Who sued their conference to attempt to leave already and got a settlement that ultimately helps them leave if they want to in 5 years? Florida State and Clemson of the ACC. So viability in the next 5 years, that question can be answered by who actively wants to leave, who does not want to be there. And you could also possibly add North Carolina into that as they expand with Bill Belichick and their footprint and that Jordan brand. And we know Clemson and Florida State aren't exactly happy. And from there, schools like Louisville or Virginia Tech or Georgia Tech are raising red flags saying, wait a second, why with this new algorithm that determines Miami gets a lot more money, do we get less money when we have Atlanta or great basketball or TV revenue out the butt because we still have viewership? So I believe the ACC is in a more tumultuous spot because the Big 12's 16 teams want to be there. And I know, we all know, you can't necessarily firmly say that about the ACC.
That's fair. I think that's entirely true. I do think what the ACC did was still smart to give concessions on the unequal revenue sharing, because you at least bought yourself time and gave them an option to see how they can be financially competitive, at least closer to the Big Ten or SEC between now and 2030, when all the conference media rights deals are up for renegotiation once again.
Can I say
yes, you can.
That also, I want to give the ACC some credit here. They can still add someone in an expansion like a USF, who we look across the room in 2 years and go, shoot, that was a great move. BYU for the Big 12. 2 years later, we're saying, wow, the Big 12 got even more than they expected out of BYU. Maybe that's Memphis. Maybe that's an SMU who's already coming to the ACC. In 2 years, we could be talking about a much different conference, and they could pull the trigger on becoming the all-state sponsored ACC or the 5-Hour Energy sponsored ACC and have more money that way. A lot can change in 5 years. This is just as of today, late March. By the way, speaking of today, you've had a lot of guests on the show the last couple of days. I love the myriad you brought to this program, and hopefully you have plenty more today.
Oh, yes, indeed. Indeed we do. Another 3 guests lineup today because other people have great opinions and ideas as well. Not you specifically, but other people.
Not at all.
Do. Yeah, I bring you on for other reasons. I don't know what those are. They make me. No, I'm kidding. They don't. But so when I look at the Big 12 just from a football standpoint, also I'll just throw this out there. You said, who wants to leave the Big 12? Utah. I'm just saying, if an opportunity arose, in all seriousness, if an opportunity arose for Utah to leave the Big 12, it would probably only be for the Big 10. But if the Big 10 ever decided, I'm not reporting or saying they are, no one has, but if the Big 10 ever decided we want another team, I guarantee you Utah would be on the phone begging to get into the Big 10. I'm just gonna throw that out there. But the other angle I want to look at this through, Drake, is the football.
I see it. Do you see it? It's the Locked On Big 12 title. Utah is leaving for the Big 10, says analyst. I don't know.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing that on Monday's show. But I think that on the football field, though, I'm taking the ACC on the one hand, but the Big 12 on the other. I think the depth of the Big 12 is stronger top to bottom. I do think the ACC sneakily has some good teams in the middle. Now, would I like to see NC State and Virginia Tech elevate themselves to be on the Big 12's level in the middle of the conference? Yes, I would. However, what I've got in the ACC for the next 5 years at least, I believe, that I don't have in the Big 12, two programs that I know, if they are run correctly and at their best, can win the national championship. I don't have that in the Big 12. They're trying to get to that level. I don't think it's impossible. I think there are schools and programs that are trying to ascend to that upper tier college football, but nobody in the Big 12 right now has a national championship in this century, and certainly not in the modern era. Whereas you look in the ACC, you've got Florida State and you've got Clemson, and those are just within the last 10, 12 years.
Sure, but then there's the conversation of what have you done for me lately? SMU walked from the mid-major level into the ACC and won the conference in the regular season last year, could have won the conference championship. So if the Big 12 saw the rise of a Cincinnati in year one, or the rise of even a BYU in year one or year two to win the league, then maybe we have a different conversation. Instead, for the Big 12, it was another power conference school, Arizona State, that took over last year, who had power conference resources coming from the Pac-12, whose remnants featured an Oregon or a Washington, RIP, or a Washington, right? So those schools already had great recruiting bases, great money bases from the Pac-12. SMU came in on its own dime and already went to the conference championship, won it in the regular season, was the best team there for 13, 14 weeks. So to argue the ACC is better at the top, sure, because Florida State has potential. There's that potential word that really doesn't mean anything if it doesn't pan out. Yeah, Clemson has potential to win a national championship, but they didn't even go as far as Arizona State because of the way the college football playoff is formatted, right? But yeah, they've done it recently. Florida State and Clemson been good, but they weren't last year, and you can't say they're going to be next year. We don't know that. I could see.
Well, Clemson should be pretty darn good.
They should be.
I mean. They should be. They were not as competitive with Texas on the road as Arizona State was in a neutral site. That's objectively true. ASU was one play away or one incorrect call away from beating the Longhorns and going to the semifinal against Ohio State. But Clemson is returning almost their entire team. They did win the ACC. They were competitive with a really, really good Texas team that were runners-up in the SEC last year. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Clemson's a Final Four team next season.
No doubt, but I think you'll also make the argument later on in the show that Arizona State could be better than Clemson next year. That's not impossible. Sam Levitt's a top 5 quarterback in college football per On 3, a national brand, right? There's a way that Arizona State is better. There's a way Arizona State runs the table, is a top 8 team going into the college football playoff, right? So what I'm saying is the Big 12 right now also has teams on par with Clemson for next year, right? If you want to be the next 5 years, even the next
for next year, sure. What I want to see from a football standpoint for the Big 12 is which program goes up. Arizona State flashed up, and that was great. How do they respond? And we're going to talk about the Sun Devils later on today's show. But where's the response? Where's the elevation to that upper echelon?
The programs you mentioned, Florida State and Clemson, have gone down. You mentioned Clemson going to a national championship.
Yes.
Then they went down, starkly down. I
think Clemson could be going back up.
They could be, very, very true, but so is Arizona State, right? So right now, we don't have on the field 2 ACC teams that are better than Big 12 teams, that we know we can say firmly, oh yeah, the ACC is better in football next year. So then 5 years down the line, what if Clemson regresses to what they were in 2022? We can't say they won't, because that's what we know of Clemson the last couple of years, is they aren't at a national championship level. Is the Big 12? No, but it's on par with the ACC. And then you add on the fact that Clemson and Florida State obviously aren't the happiest in the world, and I'd rather be the Big 12.
Is Miami going to enter the chat? Gosh, there's so many things that'll play out over the next several years. I tell you what, that conversation energized me like a 5-hour energy shot. Drake 12, that's just what he does. The Energizer Bunny here on the show.